Ahoy there, me hearties! This be Captain Silverhook, and you're listening to the Two Old Pirates podcast. Set sail for an open sea of stories, tales, and some really crazy stuff. I expect you to like and subscribe, lest you be walking the plank. Ha ha ha!
Hello and welcome to the Two Old Pirates. This is episode 90. It's your boy Eric, and I hope that you enjoy this special episode over the Beatles. Even if you're not a big Beatles fan, I think that you'll get a lot out of this episode. So first off, we have to talk about the big news. The Beatles are back in the top 10. Okay, if you don't know much and you've only heard about the Beatles and stuff, let's go through a couple things. They're around from 64 to 70. That's 1964 to 1970. They only had a 6-year span where they released music. Then they broke up. And they're still the biggest band that's ever been. They've sold more records, singles, and LPs than any other band, bar none. They still have the most number one hits out of any artist. Okay? So they did that in a 6-year span over 50 years ago. They broke up before I was born. Right? So it's pretty amazing what they were able to do in a 6-year period of time, and that their talent and the love for them is still lasting enough. Now and Then is a modern classic by the Beatles, the greatest band ever. And it opens this week at number 7, another top 10 hit for a band that broke up 53 years ago. It just goes to show you the talent and the love that people had for them. So what I want to get into now is you have the Beatles out with the number 7 song in America. It hit number 1 in England. It's their 18th number 1 in England, right? But at the same time, the Rolling Stones just released their new album, which is their 35th album to hit like the top 10 or something. It's unbelievably crazy how many albums they've had over this. Remember, they started right after the Beatles became famous. And they've still been chugging along all these years. And they have 35 albums that have hit the top 10. Their album hit number 3 here in the U.S. So you have a band that's still been touring since 1964 in the U.S. We're talking about, a long time. Hitting number 3 on the album chart with people like Taylor Swift and SZA and Drake and all the country, Morgan Wallen and stuff. You have those guys hitting number 3 on the album charts, and then the Beatles hitting number 7, and it's 2023. I mean, these guys, that was 60 years ago that they are young and fresh and releasing their stuff. Now they're in their 80s and they're still kind of dominating the charts. So I highly, highly recommend giving it as many listens as it takes until Now and Then hits you. And if you think about it, the last words evidently ever spoken between John Lennon and Paul McCartney, person to person. John Lennon turned to Paul McCartney in New York. McCartney had come to visit him, and John didn't have time. He said, "Hey, I'm baking bread. I'm taking care of my little boy, Sean, and I can't just hang out like we used to and stuff." He's all, "I'll catch up to you some other time." And then he patted him on the shoulder. He's all, "But think about me every now and then, old friend." Kind of spooky. That's right around the same time that he wrote this song, Now and Then. Gives you kind of chills. But I also want to talk about this. People sit there and say, well, if your favorite bands are the Ocean Blue and the Doobie Brothers, the Beatles have such a huge track record of songs. Some of the most beautiful songs in the history of rock and roll. But we all have our favorites. And I'm probably going to surprise some of you if you're Beatles fans with my favorites, because they're not, and I'm not one of those type of people doing. I have to go against I'm going to go against the norm. I'm going to pick some rare B-sides. I'm not crazy. I like all their music, but the thing is, there's some that every single time I hear it come on the radio, I get jazzed. I'm like, yeah, this is a cool song. I've always loved this song since I was a kid. And there's other songs. I mean, I love Hey Jude. I love Let It Be. I love Come Together. I Want to Hold Your Hand. All those famous songs. I love all those songs. But the thing is, these are the 10 that I personally like. I'm going to tell you who sang them, if they hit, and what album they were on, so you can check them out also. So these are not 1 through 10 or anything. But the first one that I looked up and I was like, that's one of them. Do You Want to Know a Secret? So Do You Want to Know a Secret was released off the Please Please Me album. It hit number 2. And they gave it to George because George didn't have the strongest singing voice. And since Paul and John did all the singing, they kind of gave him a song. They wrote him a song and said, here, sing this, George. And it hit number 2. It almost actually hit number 1. But Do You Want to Know a Secret? I've always loved that song. Second one would be, it's a classic. It's an amazing song. And I don't think the Beatles had done anything like this until this song was released. And then they just went up another step. Eleanor Rigby. Eleanor Rigby only hit number 11. It was off the Revolver album, and it was sung by Paul. If you've ever heard it with the strings and the flowing vocals of the father of Mackenzie and Eleanor Rigby, and I mean it's an all-encompassing tale that's nothing that they had done to me up to that point in their recording history. Next one, Got to Get You Into My Life. This was not released off the Revolver album way back in the 60s. It's by Paul. But in 1976, just out of the rarity, they decided to release Got to Get You Into My Life. They had been broken up for 6 years, and just to show how powerful they still were as a band, they were all solo at this time, releasing their own stuff. It hit number 7. It was a top 10 hit. It still is a top 10 hit. Got to Get You Into My Life. Earth, Wind & Fire, I believe, did a really big cover of that too. Next one, Hello Goodbye. How can you not listen to Hello Goodbye and not be in a positive mood? Hello Goodbye is like one of the coolest tunes ever. That was not released on any album. It hit number 1, but it was just released as a single. They didn't even put it on an album. They're just farting around in the studio. By this time, they had stopped touring. They got more experimental. They come up with Hello Goodbye. Paul sings it, goes straight to number 1. The Beatles could do no wrong at one point in time. Next one. This one grew on me over the time. It probably replaced some other songs that I liked and stuff, but I've Got a Feeling. It's off the Let It Be album, which was the last release that they made, but it was before Abbey Road, but they didn't release it until after Abbey Road. And I've Got a Feeling never was released. It wasn't a hit. It's just on the album, and I've always got a good groove out of that. And it was 2 different songs that Paul and John were working on, and they just kind of meshed it together and made it as one song called I Got a Feeling. Paul and John take lead vocals on this song, and to me it's got a cool, like, little bitty rock feel to it. So I Got a Feeling. Next one, If I Needed Someone. If I Needed Someone was never released as a single. It was on Yesterday and Today, and it was sung by George. And to me, it's probably one of his best songs up until you get up to Here Comes the Sun and Something. It's an amazingly good song that he wrote all on his own. No Paul, no John, all George. My next one would be Lovely Rita. Lovely Rita is an amazing song off the Sgt. Pepper's album. It was never hit, it was never released, but it's a really cool song that Paul McCartney delivers about a meter maid and how he would like to take her out. And it's one of Paul's songs. It's got a jovial feel to it. It's kind of peppy and kind of like got a good swing to it. The next one is off the Magical Mystery Tour album. It's called The Magical Mystery Tour. And there's no way that you can't listen to the Magical Mystery Tour or not. It's kind of like Hello Goodbye. It's got that peppy, positive vibe to it that Paul put in a lot of his songs. And some people didn't like that about him. They said he wasn't serious enough. And I can understand that. But I kind of like the upper stuff where he tries to make you feel better about yourself, that little melodic tune. It did not hit. It was not released as a single, but it's just a great song. The next song, I'd only heard Revolution 1 and Revolution 9 off the White Album. And they made a third version of Revolution, and that ended up hitting number 12. And it's John on lead vocals. And it's a sped up version of their take of Revolution 1. But Revolution 1 and Revolution 9 were off the White Album. And this one was actually used in a commercial in 1987 with John McEnroe playing tennis. And if you know anything about me, I played tennis in high school. I coach tennis now. And the thing is, I just remember seeing my personal tennis hero, John McEnroe, playing with this. You say you're on a rev, and it was for Nike. And then I was like, dude, what is this? Because I'd never heard that song by the Beatles. It sounds crazy, but I'd never heard that song. And then I found out it was the Beatles. I was like, crap, I have like all these CDs. And it was a single that was not put on any of the albums that I already had. So I was like, oh, I got to get that one. So Revolution, the single, primo stuff. Another Paul song, We Can Work It Out, hit number one. It was just a single. It wasn't released on an album. It's just got such a positive vibe, and I believe John did the middle part with Life is Very Short and There's No Time. But Try to See It My Way. The very poppy sound is Paul. It's Paul. He's guilty of it again. But it's just a great song. We Can Work It Out, Hello, Goodbye, Magical Mystery Tour. It's just, they've got these positive freaking vibes to them that you can't help but be happy when you listen to them. Well, those are 10. And I said I'd give you 10, but there's little asterisks. And the thing is, you can't have your favorite Beatles songs without having at least one Ringo song. With a little help from my friends off of Sgt. Pepper's. It was never released as a single, but anybody who's ever seen shows over the years that they use it in the background or something, it's just a wonderful song about a guy getting along and through life, through ups and downs, but he always has his friends, and he always gets by with a little help from his friends. And I like the part where he says, "Do you need anybody? I just need someone to love." And that was their songs. It was all about love and understanding and peace and kindness, and there was no anger or hate, really. And that's why I think they were so positive. There was no negativeness. I mean, maybe Yoko. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this short episode over the Beatles, their new song, Now and Then. Check it out. If you're into the Stones, check out their new album. I've heard at least 2 songs on there. The thing is, it's rocking. It's 2023 and they still are kicking ass. So I hope that you enjoy this. If you're a Beatles fan and you've never seen me before and you just happen to come across us, please like and subscribe. Share. I'd love to get as many views as we possibly can to get rocking and rolling for this new 5th season we just started. And subscribe. Just subscribe. But I hope that you enjoy this. I hope if you're a Beatles fan, you continue to listen to them, and we hope that number 7 can go to number 1 next week. If we can get enough people to listen on Spotify, share it, stream it, buy it, do whatever you have to do. Let's get Now and Then to the number 1 spot to be the Beatles' 21st number 1 hit, and it would be their first number 1 hit in 53 years. All we can do is hope. Until next time, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Two Old Pirates about the Beatles and how they're here for us always. Thanksgiving's coming up, and I hope that you guys have a blessed day. Peace. Eric.